Beat up by airplane food, I arrived in paradise on the 15th day of the 12th month on the eve of the full moon. A special day, a moon-related ceremony the Balinese call Hitam Bulan. Limos from the area's five-star hotels lined up along the passenger pickup area, the drivers holding signs with names, but none with mine. I fell in line with my Balinese handbook alongside the rest of the new arrivals. With jet lag from the 23-hour flight, culture shock, language barrier, and familial dislocation, panic set in. Noise and pollution of an airport under construction, chaotic traffic, the taxi driver hustle magnified my anxiety. The heat was pervasive. Even the normally cool of the sky seemed inflamed as it burned above me. The sun's flare singed my head. The road ahead was like a stretched piece of black lava, with the white lane divider lifted off the road by the heat. The effect created an imaginary highway that blended with the sky, leading to a place where only Bali's endangered starling might be found. Heat snakes rose up and emerged to form a coiled python mirage. The tar was so hot that my sandals left a Nike logo on it. That's part of the chapter when I first arrived in Bali at the airport.
And we're just listening to Arlo Hennings from Indonesia, who is about to become our next new curvy crewster, who is going to be who's going to be sending
I feel very curvy right now.
Well, I should hope so. And you're going to be finding us some fabulous music from the area that you're currently located in, which is around Indonesia, Bali, around there.
Well, yeah, I'm originally from Minneapolis, Minnesota, which is the home of the pop star Prince. But currently, for the past 5 years, I've lived in Indonesia. 3 of those years in Ubud, Bali, and now for the past 2 years in Yogyakarta, Indonesia, which is on the big island of Java. They call that the city of artists. There's like over 3,000 artists that live in Yogyakarta.
Wow.
And there's 120 universities and a student population of about 300,000. So the place is just packed with art, everything you can imagine, from music, graphic arts, poetry, Javanese dance, you name it. It's a great place
to fabulous.
Explore your creative abilities. So.
Well, I can see how you landed there, or why you landed there after reading your autobiography, which has just come out, which we're going to talk about now, just to introduce who you are to the Curvy listeners before you have to get on with your Curvy crew duties and find fabulous music for us. But the reason why I thought that you would make a wonderful Curvy is your incredible background, which you talk about in your autobiography. I mean, it says that one of your first lessons in the industry came from Al Jarreau's manager.
That's true. And it's funny you would call my history amazing. I think it's the history of a lunatic.
Well, I didn't want to say that.
I mean, it's not exactly like the life of a person who worked in the corporate world. You know, I kind of made up my life as I went along.
Well, you also worked with one of my very favourite artists of the 70s, Sean Phillips.
Oh, you know Sean Phillips. Yes, I was his manager for 18 years.
Wow.
And during that time, I found out Sean had a fan base in Australia, and we almost came to Australia on tour. We came very close.
Well, I think that fan base probably came from the radio station I was working at, and also the community radio stations here. There's fabulous community radio stations in different states playing his music, because we were the only people who did, because the commercial stations were a bit too poppy for Sean's music.
That's absolutely an amazing connection. I wish I would have known you then, Gail. I certainly would have looked you up because the record company then was A&M Records before they became Universal. Just weren't so sure about it, So
we loved him here. He did some fabulous stuff. His voice used to just soar.
Sean,
incredible.
Instead, Sean wound up in South Africa, as I talk about in my book, but. We didn't get to Australia. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay, but you did get an invitation to. Did you actually meet President Nelson Mandela?
Did I meet Mandela? Well, can almost count.
That's pretty good. It's pretty good.
It's like this. I arrived in Johannesburg. One day before the eve of the elections, and the international arrival at the airport had been bombed, and so we were diverted from our original itinerary, which was to meet Mandela, because Sean was a special guest. As a matter of fact, we were the only American musicians who were invited into the new South Africa at that time. So when we finally got to the presidential palace, there were like layers and layers, as you can imagine, of party members and reporters and everyone and anyone, higher up than we were. We just couldn't get close to him at that time. So I didn't get to meet Nelson then, but I certainly got to experience South Africa's first free democratic election in history. I saw 11 different South African native tribes line up down the street by the thousands, waiting to get to the voting booth to cast their vote. So it was an amazing, once-in-a-lifetime experience.
You have led an incredible life, Arlo. And
stop it, Gail. Are you kidding?
Well, you go from those sorts of shenanigans. And how come you ended up in Bali?
Yeah, I found everything but money. Okay, so how I ended up in Bali? Well, okay, so during the Wall Street catastrophe, the year in 2008, 2009. One of America's greatest recessions, millions of Americans were wiped out. They lost their jobs, they lost their homes, you name it, their savings. So I was swept up into that whole disaster where I lost my home, my job, after 2.5 years of not being able to find new employment. I lost my house, my health insurance, you name it, the things we take for granted that we get through with in our life. And my parents were deceased, and my sisters had their own problems. So there was really no one to take me in. So imagine losing everything, and you're standing on the edge of a cliff.
And you actually lost everything from a fairly well secure sort of job that you were in. You were the A&R director and co-publisher for Polygram Music at the time, weren't you? Polygram International. Was it around then?
Not at that particular time, no. But I had a different corporate gig, and I was still managing Sean on the side. But what happened was. When the hit the fan, and my back was against the wall, I had to make a decision. I had to get out of my place, or my options were literally, okay, go live in a shelter. or in a cardboard box underneath the bridge. So I took what savings I had, which wasn't much, and imagine that I took a map of the world and I colored in all the countries that were the cheapest place to live. And so I closed my eyes and I threw a dart, and the dart landed on Ubud, Bali. I said, okay, I guess I'm going there. I'm going to Ubud, Bali. And I knew a couple of musicians that happened to live there, and I connected with them. And they said, yeah, Arlo, come on, you can live on the cheap in Ubud, Bali, like a couple $100 a month. And that was very appealing to me at the time, because I'm wondering how I'm going to survive, how I'm going to reinvent myself. What's my next step in life? Because at this point, I was like 57 years old, late in life, trying to think, how am I going to reinvent myself? Because no one wants to hire me because I'm too old. And so I take what I got and I buy a one-way ticket with my guitars. And I backed up my life on an iPod. And I landed in Denpasar, Bali in the year 2011 in December, just before my birthday and the holiday season in Ubud. And that was the beginning of my experience of going to Bali. So it was not a planned move, like I had not made numerous reconnaissance missions to Bali. Like I know so many Australians who I've met in Bali who have been to Bali a million times, and they know the language, they know how to navigate the roads, they understand the culture. I mean, when I got there, I didn't know anything. I was just a newbie, greenhorn pilgrim.
And Arlo, this is all documented in your Guitarlo autobiography, isn't it?
Yeah.
And
in the Bali part of the book. Yeah.
In the Bali part, yes.
The book is broken in two sections. There's 29 stories that chronicle 60 years of my life. So the first half of the book is about what forces created me, what made me, what made the narrator. So that goes back from my early childhood up through the early 90s.
And during that time, do you actually talk about when your works that were published by Lawrence Ferlinghetti, of all people?
Yeah, California poet Lawrence Ferlinghetti. Yes, I mean, along the way, across these 60 years of my life that's in this book, Guitarlo, I meet many historic characters like California poet Lawrence Ferlinghetti and Hunter Thompson and the Merry Pranksters and Jesse the Body Ventura, which may not be very familiar to people in Australia. He was a professional wrestler who became the governor of Minnesota. The pop star Prince, the billionaire Clement Stone, the Native American heroes of the Red Movement, Russell Means and Dennis Banks, and as well as Sean Phillips, who we talked about earlier. So I cover all that in these 29 stories that make up 340 pages of this memoir.
So Arlo, where can people? I don't want to give too much away about the book because I think people should grab a copy and buy a copy and read it. So where can they actually get it? Where can people get this book if they're interested?
Very very easy. Just Amazon, Australia. You can order through them.
Terrific. And it's just called Guitarlo.
Yeah. So it's my name, Arlo. And just add guitar, so that's how I came up with Guitarlo.
Okay.
It's sort of a play on my name.
Okay. Now, so yes, you did land in Bali, and with your incredibly colourful background, you've managed to hook up with a whole lot of artists there. And now, what are you doing in Bali now? You're running a record label. Is that? So just run down what you're doing there at the moment.
At the moment, in the past year, with my business partner, Terry Collins, who is an expat in Jakarta. We've created an international portal for Indonesian jazz. The label is called Indojazzia. And we aim to support the creative musicians who lack record deals, managers, media promotion, but yet they are forging distinctive paths in the jazz genre. So one of our first international release is Eric Sanhi from Denpasar, Bali. And you have a copy of his CD.
Yeah, let's play a track. Can you just introduce him very briefly, and we'll play a track.
Eric is Indonesian, but he currently lives in Denpasar, Bali, and his wife is from Sydney, just out of coincidence. And he's been playing around the Denpasar club scene most of his life. If you went there today, you'd probably find him somewhere in Seminyak or Kuta or Senor or one of these places. He plays in the clubs full time. But he has a remarkable originality. I mean, besides playing cover tunes, which most jazz musicians have to do to earn a living. So he is a wonderful original composer, and you can hear that on his music. This debut CD he did was recorded at Abbey Road Studios in London. He made 3 CDs worth of original music. He does have one cover on there, a song by the Beatles called I Will, which is his own version of that song. He wanted to dedicate that for recording at Abbey Road. So this first CD is a solo piano release, so there's no other instrumentation. It's just solo piano.
Eric Sondhi.
Thank you, Gail, for having me on the show. And you can find the music of Eric Sondhi on Amazon.com, Bandcamp.com, or CDBaby.com, physical CD, or download wherever music is sold. One last item. Please check out our label blog, indojazia.net, and that's spelled INDOGAZZIA.net, where we feature the latest and greatest in Indonesian jazz. Email me with any questions, Arlo at arlohennings.com, with any questions, and I hope to see you again soon. The next time you're in Yogyakarta, look me up. Thank you. Bye.